Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Monday Night Must See TV with the Hudson Valley Squares. Welcome, everybody. In the house today, we've got Ryan Scow, Steve Keeler, the double Chris's, Chris Allo and Chris Canzaneri, and Nick Franco.
Woo!
Greetings, gentlemen. How are you?
What up?
What's going on?
Just so everybody knows.
Still working on my time machine to go back to 73 and get the hell out of this wretched mess for a little bit.
I hear you. So for those of you that are asking, where's Butch Jones? Tonight, Butch is watching hockey because, of course, we know that playoff hockey is happening. Sydney has actually been getting ready to move into a new place. So she's kind of tied up for a couple of weeks. So we probably won't see her till early June. And Lynn has had a night working thing going on for a bit. So she's been kind of hit or miss. So hopefully we'll have everybody back in a couple of weeks. But you got the six of us. Six of us ain't bad, right?
We're useless without the ladies, so
I
you might as well just click off right now.
Hey, Chris, could you put a wig on?
I could.
All right.
I don't know if it'll improve any viewership.
No, it's probably have the opposite effect, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true.
Come on, Nick. You got all those metal chicks, so you got to bring one on night.
You know what? Let me just get them there.
Hey, come on, wait.
Keep them in the closet.
You got a couple
in the
now.
closet right now.
Stocked up fresh, ready for the show.
Guy's been traveling all around the world, all kinds of metal shows, pictures of all kinds of ladies.
Those are men, Steve. Those are
They
men.
were? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you gotta
Hey,
wipe
I'm an older guy. It's hard for me to figure out.
So back by popular request,
Good evening.
and I know this episode is also making Mr. Keeler very happy because he loves doing these year shows. We're going to pick our favorite 5 albums from 1973, which, in case you haven't checked, was a ridiculously stacked year of some of the most legendary rock albums of the 70s. So this was indeed a very hard assignment. So, in fact, we're going to let Mr. Keeler go first today. So we're going to go Steve, Ryan, Chris Canzaneri, Chris Allo, Nick Franco, and myself. What we're going to do is each person is going to list their 2 at a time. So Steve's going to start off with his number 5 and number 4. We'll go around once, then everybody will do their 3 and 2, and then we'll finish up with everybody's number 1 and do some honorables at the end. So, Steve, what do you got for your 5?
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Let's back up a little.
Slow down.
Ryan Scow doesn't allow me to do honorable mentions.
We're going to do them tonight.
He cries about it all week on our private group. If you got on the viewers want to know about it. Oh, that Keeler's going to do 42 honorable mentions tonight. We're never going to get done.
That's called a joke.
Okay, I know it's a joke. But anyhow, I had to rub it in a little bit. Since Butch isn't around to pick on me, I got to, it's easy sailing here. Right now.
But you got to keep the honorable mentions down to a fucking dull roar. Let's not.
You know what?
I'll
go through the whole Wikipedia list of 73 for you guys for honorable mentions. Anyhow, so I am going to cheat starting off tonight because this is a tough assignment for me. And how do I pick between these 3 albums and how do I leave one out? So I'm doing a 3-way tie for 5th. I'll do it very quickly.
Doing a Keeler already.
Right out of the fucking
on my
gate.
channel, they call that. On my channel, they call that a pardo.
Thumbs down.
They call that a pardo.
What?
What?
They call it a pardo when there's ties.
They call it a pardo when he does
Pardo calls ties sometimes. So anyhow, I'll keep it short, as Chris Allo says.
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
And we're going American bands, American groups
tonight after the show.
For number 5. Yeah, Chris has got some wrestling to catch up on tonight, I'm sure. So shall I start? Shall I kick it off? All right.
Go.
Yes.
So number 5, it's a 3-way tie between Leonard Skinner, Pronounced, Aerosmith, Self-Titled, and Alice Cooper, $1 Billion Babies. I couldn't leave any of these off the list. So I'm giving you all 3 of them. And the songs I dig the most off of each one, off of Skinner, I Ain't the One, Poison Whiskey, Tuesday Dawn, and How Do You Leave Freebird Out. Aerosmith, that album was one of the albums I've listened to the most on this whole list. Mama Kin, Make It, Dream On, Moving Out, and Alice Cooper, $1 Billion Baby. Since Sydney's not here, I'm sure she would have had that on her list. But Elected, the title track, No More Mr. Nice Guy, I Love the Dead. Those 3 albums are just such great records, and I had to include them all. So I don't care if you guys don't like it. I'm politically
we love the album,
proud of it, just like ECW.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the 10 choices for number 4.
Yeah, and then the 15 choices for number 3.
I have a 7-way tie for 4.
Oh, fuck, we did. What do you
He's
got?
going to get every honorable mention in his top 5. Here we go.
No, so number 4 is Led Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy. Song remains the same. The Rain song, No Quarter, just those 3, Over the Hills and Far Away. It's a great summertime record too. I grew up listening to that. And hey, 73 was a very good year. I was only 12 years old and I wasn't really listening to this stuff yet because I was still listening to top 40 and soul and Motown. But I got into it right around in this next year or so. And of course now all this stuff is our staples and keeps my life going. So
yeah. So
it's Zeppelin, Skinner, Aerosmith, and Cooper, and I cheated, so I don't care. I don't care. Chris Allen's grimacing down there.
All right, so this was a good topic. We had some real good. We had some good discussions. One of the text groups I'm in with Nick, and every week when we do this, I'll bring up like, hey, this is the topic. What do you guys think? We just shoot the breeze with it. And sometimes some people will be like, how about this sound? And usually like, oh, you know what? I totally forgot about that. Great choice.
Sure.
In this case, that was my number 4. So starting off with number 5, I'm going to go a little out in left field here. Pick something that doesn't get talked a lot about on this show, but it's a great album, and that is Herbie Hancock, Headhunters, jazz fusion album.
Wow.
4 songs. It is a fucking instrumental beast, absolute beast. Herbie on it. You got Bernie Maupin on saxophone, Paul Jackson on bass, Harvey Mason on drums, who just is disgustingly fucking awesome drum performance on this album, and Bill Summers on a whole slew of instruments. But yeah, this is a great album. Very funky, very smooth, jazzy, just a really good, laid back, relaxing album. You can put it on headphones. It sounds like, $8 million. Production's awesome. So, and this is the album that kind of like really brought him into another level of popularity, really helped boost his name up there. And you can see why, because it's a monstrously good album. Number 4, I couldn't find my copy. I was digging around for it for 45 minutes. So I had to listen to it on YouTube to get my fix so I could refresh my memory. And this is the album that a friend recommended because it wasn't on my radar, but she mentioned it. And I'm like, you know what? That's a fucking great choice. Great album. And that is Raw Power by the Stooges. Or since the Stooges had broken up, now it's Iggy Pop and the Stooges. It was like an alternate name. So Stooges had 2 albums, pretty much the inventors of punk rock along with the Ramones, although they were a couple years earlier than the Ramones. They broke up. They came, they reunited, got a record deal with, I think, Columbia Records. So there was Iggy. He brought in a new guitarist, James Williamson, who's amazing. And then he got 2 of the old Stooge guys, Ron and Scott Ashton. So they put this album out. It's very raw. It's very feral. You listen to this and you're like, yeah, I could hear all this crazy, noisy music that would come down the pike. Motorhead, Ramones, Sex Pistols, Venom, Slayer, any of this crazy shit that came around. This album's like one of the the archetype for a lot of that stuff. It's earlier Stooges albums are like a little more rock and roll, bouncy, still intense, but like a little more good times. But this one's got more teeth. So I fucking love Raw Power. So I wish I could find my mix of it. But and David Bowie originally was the there's all kind of studio shenanigans. So they actually had David Bowie kind of step in and be like, we're not going to release this album until it gets remixed. And David Bowie's going to be the guy. So him and Iggy kind of hashed it out back then. But I prefer a later like raw mix that Iggy himself did, or actually the original mix that didn't get released because the record label said fuck off. Bowie remixed it, but I like that original mix, which came out a couple decades later in the 90s. So Raw Power by the Stooges. And that's it. Just 2 choices, 4 and 5.
Cool. Good choices. All right, Chris Canzaneri.
Hey, like everybody said, there's a hell of a lot of great albums from this year. I decided to stick with stuff that I actually have in my possession because some people like to see the albums when you mention them. I couldn't find my copy of Raw Power either, so I got to start really digging for that. But I was able to find my number 5, which is Chicago 6.
Hell yeah.
This is kind of a transitional album. Chicago 5 was pretty jazzy, pretty a lot of jamming, longer songs. Chicago 7 was even more like that. This one, they decided to let their incredibly talented bass player sing a few freaking pop hits. And I think it was kind of a little glimpse into the future of what this band was going to be like. But these are good songs. This isn't like '80s Chicago. You know, this is guy like Feeling Stronger and, you know, good stuff, good Cetera song stuff. So,
Not the Sabbath.
not a lot of jamming like Chicago 7 or 5.
Yeah, still good. Still good.
And then 4 is Intervisions by Stevie. This is a killer album. This is really when he stopped being little Stevie Wonder and singing songs about loving the cute girl from school and whatever else, and became a real adult artist who was taking on social issues and whatever else. Just killer album cover too. So tons of great songs on there. What is it? Living Just Enough for the City and Higher Ground. You know, just killer album.
Classics.
So, my number 4.
Nice. Good choices.
Good choices.
All right, Mr. Allo.
Okay, my number 5 by a pretty popular band, and I apparently I famously quoted that when this guy was 16 years old, he was fucking making a killer rock record with ripping guitar solos, and when I was 16, I couldn't even make a grilled cheese sandwich. It's the Scorpions' "Lonesome Crow," of course,
Nice.
featuring 16-year-old Michael Schenker on the debut Scorpions record, which is really, it's a great record, but quite different from the stuff they would do with Uli John Roth, and definitely different from all the stuff they did later on in the 80s and forward. It's definitely more like a weird psychedelic acid rock kind of thing, but I totally dig it. It was released in Europe. I looked it up in 72, but in the States in 73. So fuck it. I'm going with it. And number 4, Steve already mentioned it in one of his 20 picks for the first 2 albums. Pronounced Leonard Skinner. I'm not a huge Southern rock fan, but man, this album's just a classic with Freebird, I Ain't the One, Give Me 3 Steps. I mean, every song on here is great. I know Plug for Middletown. Leonard Skinner is playing there this weekend. I wish I was able to go, but I'll be at some other stuff, so I can't do it.
You
But
can't go Friday night? I had a ticket for you. If you want to go.
I'm seeing Candlemass in
Oh,
Philadelphia.
cool. Oh, you're going to Philly for the
Yes.
beer fest. Yeah.
I'll be there with you, Chris.
I'll see you there. I'll be there.
We'll have to meet up again and take a better picture than we did in Maryland Death Fest, because I was kind of tired of Maryland Death Fest.
No, we'll get a better one this
Yes.
time. We'll sort it out.
You got good pictures in Maryland.
Yeah.
All right, Nick.
Hello. So, excuse me. So this, you know, I was born in 76, and everything that I got into after that was from before I was born came from my brother. So, you know, I think looking back at it now, I wish my parents had gotten their shit together and had me earlier, because I would have, these albums are albums that I think I would have gotten into if I was coming up during that time. As it is now, I'm not really very well versed on 70s music. So it was interesting to go diving in and see what really appeals to me now. So the first one, the number 5, I first heard of this band by reading Iron Maiden's biography. And when Steve Harris was talking about bands that influenced him, this was one of them, and it's Wishbone Ash. And yeah, and like, you know, it was such a cool name to me, you know, Wishbone Ash. Think about okay, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, by the time I got around to get into them, it was probably much later than most people. But the album Wishbone 4 is really, really good. It's just such a satisfying listen. I hear a lot of the balladry that I would come to appreciate in more, you know, fantasy laden heavy metal bands of like you know, and like even you look at a band like Blind Guardian, when they do like their little ballads about Middle Earth, you can hear a lot of that type of I don't know what you would call it, acoustic type stuff. So my favorite song on the album is the song Doctor, which is more of a rocker. I think that song is so goddamn good. I wish somebody would have played it for me when I was young, but whatever. You're never too late until you're dead, right? So that's my number 5. Doctor is such a cool song. The whole album's good. And it really reminds me, it's really something that the production values in those days, I guess this album was the first one that the band themselves produced, which I just learned. Can't act like I knew that. But and you know, I love the way they produced it. I love how much you could hear the bass guitar in these recordings.
Oh yeah.
You know, I just love that. It's so good. It's so satisfying to listen to. So I'll pick Wishbone Ash as 5. And then, yeah, I got on this train a little late, but like Ryan was saying, the Stooges. When you listen to Raw Power, it contains everything that I was going to love as a adolescent. Like I hear the Misfits, I hear like all the stuff you were talking about, Ryan, that they really, I can't imagine. I always say this, but I can't imagine what hearing that in 1973 must have felt like. They must have been like on the edge of what was the heaviest you could probably get at the time. Maybe not heavier than Sabbath, but they had a wild quality to them that I really appreciate. And I think they were way ahead of their time. I don't really know much about it, but I know that I really like it. So the Stooges is my 4.
So Nick, I don't know how much further you've gone into like a Wishbone Ash, but definitely check out Argus.
Yeah.
And their self-titled debut, both great. Easily they're my favorite albums by them. But
yeah, I've heard them. They're incredible, but I'm going to get more deep into it because they have
a lot of albums.
yeah, it's a lot of stuff, but so good, like so good, just so awesome.
Cool. All right, so it's always good to be me. You want to know why it's good to be me?
Tell us.
Great hairline.
Well, that too, but because I'm lucky enough that we're going to do this exact same show on In the Prog Seat next Tuesday. So I can take out all my favorite prog and fusion albums from this huge list of great albums and save them for next week and just do like the hard rock and regular rock stuff today. So that's pretty cool, I think. So my number 5 is going to be Blue Oyster Cult, Tyranny Mutation. Second album. It's got the black side, the red side, a lot of staples, Red and the Black, Hot Rails to Hell, 7 Screaming Disbusters, OD'd on Life Itself, Mistress of the Salmon Salt, Quicklime Girl. I mean, a lot of great songs on there. This is probably the, when Blue Oyster Cult finally got a bit heavy. They've got the kind of psychedelic first album, and then this album, great stuff. Love it. And my number 4, one of 2 debuts on my list. Self-titled from Queen, Ryan's favorite band.
I like the earlier stuff more. The earlier albums I'm way more into than the.
Yeah, this is such a classic debut. It's so rocking, man. I mean, Keep Yourself Alive, Great King Rats, Modern Times Rock and Roll, Son and Daughter, Liar. I mean, 7 Seas of Rye, just classic heavy Queen. One of the most dynamic debut albums of all time. So that's my number 5, Blue Oyster Cult, Tyranny Mutation. Number 4, Queen, self-titled. Back to Steve.
So am I doing all 3 now or just 3 and 2?
Just 3 and 2.
Okay. Making sure. All right. So number 3, coming in at number 3 will be Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Brain Salad Surgery. Nothing bad I can say about this record from top to bottom. I know you're not a big fan of the Jeremy the Bouncer, maybe, but I think the whole album flows and one of my favorite records. So it made it in at number 3. And boy, I tell you, when I first looked at this, I thought it was going to be closer for 1 and 2, but it's really, my number 2 is Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. I think it's one of the best albums ever made. And another one I can say, this is a total masterpiece from front to back. And listening, and I think I picked this record a couple weeks ago in an episode for an album side, but that's my number 2, Dark Side of the Moon. I don't think I need to say much more about it. People already know. We've talked about this album so much already on the channel. And it's just an album I can go and relax and listen to at any time. And brings back some great memories, which I've talked about in the past too on here. So number 3, ALP with Brain Salad Surgery and Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, coming in at number 2. Bet you everybody can guess my number 1 already. But.
Could be.
All right. So this was a band that I love, but they had some interesting production issues. You're going to be able to guess who this is real quick. When they had all these iconic, great albums all throughout the 70s, and then later on they decided to remaster them with this bullshit 80s sound. And those are the versions you get for a while. So I got lucky. I found a box set of their first 10 albums, which included some of the 80s stuff, which includes the original mixes of the 70s stuff. And I bought this for $5. I got 10 albums for $5 off Amazon. And the band is ZZ Top. and it's my favorite album by them. It's Tres Hombres, their third album with
Cool.
the green cover. And I first heard not this band because they had some huge hits in the 80s. That's how I think anybody my age would have heard them. But I first heard this album through the Motorhead cover of Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers, which is a great cover. Motorhead totally owns it. And it's not really that different, like stylistically. It's just a little dirtier and faster. But yeah, this album, it's just great, dirty, fun, bluesy, hard rock. There's not a single weak song on it. Waiting for the Bus, Jesus Just Left Chicago. Obviously, it's got one of their big early hits, LaGrange, which has, a riff that's almost as iconic as like, Smoke on the Water. As soon as you hear it, it's just, as memorable as it gets. Moving on down the line, every song on this album is great. So that is my number 3, ZZ fucking Top from Texas. And so number 1, so when you announced this, my number 1 and number 2 were locked in immediately. Everything else was kind of, I had to think about it, but 1 and 2 were locked in. And they're kind of interchangeable because I love them so much. So I'll just pull them out of a hat here. So number 2, obviously, is going to be Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. We've talked about this album a lot. We talked about, had a whole show on Sabbath. So there's not a lot to say on it other than it's fucking awesome. Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, the title track's one of the heaviest tracks Iommi ever wrote. Sabbath, Cadaver, Killing Yourself to Live, National Acrobat, Spiral Architect. And I think we also mentioned, too, that Sabbath didn't have a lot of really cool artwork back in the day. But this album stands out, is iconic as fuck. And then the back, too, is just, as classic as it gets. So one of their best albums on some days, my favorite album by them. Great cover, great album. Sounds good, is good. Everything about it rules. So that is my number 2, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath.
Cool. Possibly more on that later, right?
I'm sure it's going to come up again.
Yep. All right. Cans, you're up. What do you got?
Okay, my number 3, Tyranny Mutation. I echo everything Pete said. This is a killer album. They really changed quite a bit on this one. And before I ever had this, I had On Your Feet or On Your Knees, their first live album. And I wondered, pretty much all the cool songs on there came from this album, Secret Treaties. And these versions are just different enough to check out if you have that other album. But killer. And my number 2 is Goodbye Yellow Brick Road.
Oh, yeah.
By Elton John. This album is loaded with hits, Banging the Jets, Candle in the Wind, title track. But it's got Funeral for a Friend and Love Lies Bleeding, which I think is one of his most ass-kicking songs.
I agree.
And it also contains my favorite Elton John song, which is Gray Seal, which doesn't get played enough on the radio. Well, I never listen to the radio anyway. I just play it for myself. But when I listened to the radio, I didn't hear it enough. But great album. I think that was the second album he put out that year. I think Don't Shoot Me on the Piano Player came out in 73 also. But this is the better album as far as I'm concerned. So Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, number 2.
One of the great double albums of all time.
Yep.
All right, Chris Allo.
Steve mentioned this one, and it's funny, when I pulled this off the shelf, I was like, oh, look at that. I didn't realize that the cover was kind of censored. Houses of the Holy from Zeppelin. I definitely am a Zeppelin fan, but my favorite stuff is the Houses of the Holy and Presence. I like the later stuff a little better. I think the songs are a little better, and I guess it's not as played out as shit from the first 4, except for Jamaica. I hate that fucking song. I can't stand it. I would scratch it off this album if I knew how to do it without fucking up the rest of the disc. But other than that, I think this album's great. It's my number 2, or my number 3 rather. See, I'm getting like Steve. I can't follow directions.
Chris, we don't want to repeat of last week's Monsters, then, right? Where we totally
I know, that was
no idea what number we were on.
Yeah, that was a little. I
wasn't on that one. You can't.
That was
blame
Steve's
me.
fault. Let's play Steve too. That was Steve's
Let's
fault.
blame Steve.
But yeah, my number 2. Man, I love this fucking record. I had read about it in the 80s, like 83 or something in Kerrang. I mentioned this once before, and it was about Sammy Hagar having David Lee Roth having a beef with Sammy Hagar for some reason. But this was when this was in the 81, 82, something like that, way before Sammy joined. And in the article, it talked about this band that Sammy was in. But back then you couldn't just fucking listen to shit on YouTube. And then I used to love. I don't know if anybody else listened to it. Charlie Kendall's Metal Shop, the only show.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, they played Rock the Nation from the first Montrose record. And I was like, holy shit, the article was totally right. It's Van Halen like 5 years before Van Halen. And I think this album's just amazing. I've only bought it like 2 or 3 times, but it's great. And I still listen to it a lot. And yeah, that's my my number 2.
It's a metal shop.
Yep.
Something like that.
That
Metal
was
shop.
it. The only show with teeth. Yeah, Charlie Kent.
It was on like Sunday night at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, it was a
PDH.
shitty time slot, but I think it did well because it was on for like years.
I can remember
It was-
hanging out and waiting for that to come on back in the
Yeah.
80s.
And it was syndicated like that D. Snyder House of Hair, and
Yeah.
you just had to catch it whenever it was in your market. And
Mm-hmm.
for those that don't know what we're talking about, it was like a syndicated metal show, and they would say there would be, you wouldn't hear the interviewer ask the question, but you would hear like Sammy Hagar talk about the first Montrose record, and then they would play a song, or they would talk to Axl Rose and they would play something from Appetite for Destruction or whatever. I don't know when the show went off the air, but I kind of don't remember it in the 90s. I definitely remember it in the 80s.
Steve, do you remember Steve in the early 80s? He used to follow the King Biscuit Flower Hour on WPDH.
Oh, which was another great show. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was so many bootlegs that came off of that show.
Yes. And then they did
Over
release some of those officially, the King Biscuit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I remember there's a purple one, and I think I have a Billy Squire, maybe.
And talking about censorship with Led Zeppelin House as a whole, yes, you can get put in Facebook jail just by putting that up.
No kidding. So
Yes.
I know I don't.
It happened to me like a year ago.
No shit. So like, because I don't have all the reissues. The
They
Zeppelin
call it child pornography or something.
So what's on the cover of the triple disc that Jimmy Page put out like 2 or 3 years ago? Is it censored like this?
No, it's the same
Or
thing.
no, that's
No, the actual album when it comes out, it's just you can't post it on like social media.
There was a paper
Gotcha.
for the
It's
reissue
nudity or whatever.
album,
Yeah.
like a paper banner that went around the
Yeah.
record.
okay.
And they changed the
So-
color. It's blue instead of like that orange hue on the.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
we'll have to Google Metal Shop and see when it went out of business.
yeah.
I'll try Googling it.
All right, Nick, 3 and
Alrighty,
2.
so my number 3 is Tyranny and Mutation. I came to Blue Oyster Cult my stupid long forever taking way, and I have Ryan to thank for finally just getting me to pay attention to them.
You're
This
welcome.
album, oh my god, first of all, I love that artwork. I love that crazy artwork. Is so cool, and I just know that if I was alive then, I know I would have loved it. I mean, just the red and the black is so goddamn good. Everything is just in perfect synchrony on this album. Yep, I know, I'm hypnotized. But I think if I was around in 73, I think when Hot Rails to Hell kicks in, I might have invented the first mosh pit, because when that gets going, that's fucking heavy.
Oh, they stuck in jam when they kick into that.
Yeah. So, and my other favorite off that is Teen Archer and 7 Screaming Dizzbusters, which
Oh yeah.
I would love if somebody could tell me what a Dizzbuster is. Is it a firework or something? I don't know. But whatever it is, it works, and it's so great. And cool, they worked with Patti Smith, which I guess was a long-standing thing. Or at least she did lyrics,
Yeah.
or something. Yeah, for Baby Ice Dog. So yeah, I got to say that I probably would love this more if I had found it earlier, if that makes any sense. But I would have definitely been on this train from the beginning, because those guys are just, they were so far ahead of their time. They're so good. And then my number 2 is Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, which won't surprise people. I guess it's such a great, it might be my favorite Sabbath record. And it's funny, again, you guys are going to shake your head, because the way that my brother wasn't so much into Black Sabbath, so it meant that I really didn't hear them much. And then whenever Anthrax released, they did a cover of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and that was like one of the first times I was over and over and over again hearing a tune of Sabbath's. And they make it a little heavier in their way, but it drove me to look into it, and I was like, oh wow, it's Ozzy's voice so good. So that's a phenomenal album, and I think right now my favorite song on it is Sabracadabra, because it's just got this energy. It's such a hard charging, like you put that on and you just are fucking happy. Like it's so good. So for a band that usually invokes a more somber mood, that's a very uplifting song. And yeah, everything on it is, I mean, there's no weak moment on the album. Even Fluff is kind of a whimsical song. So those are my 3 and 2, but they're probably interchangeable as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. My number 3 is the other debut album that I spoke about here. Chris L has already mentioned it. This is Killer, one of the great debuts of all time. Didn't I say that about the Queen one too? Well, who cares? Montrose, self-titled. Man, this is so heavy and hard rocking with great Ted Templeman production. And yeah, this kind of is like the playbook for Van Halen's first couple albums, for sure. Great vocals out of the box from Sammy, killer riffs and solos from Ronnie Montrose. Just a shame that, like, after one more album, Ronnie basically broke this band up and went with a whole new lineup. It was never, ever the same again. But man, Rock the Nation's Space Station number 5, Rock Candy. Man, it's so heavy, it's raunchy. Love it, love it, love it. That's my number 3. And number 2, Ryan has already mentioned. This band, so good. Call them Southern rock, call them blues rock, whatever you want to call them. This is my favorite album by them. It's just so rocking, so raunchy. Tres Hombres by ZZ Top. I mean, man, Waiting for the Bus, Jesus Just Left Chicago, Beer Drinkers and Hell Raisers, Master of Sparks, which is like the coolest song ever. Everything Precious and Grace, so heavy, LaGrange. And then if that isn't enough, look at that spread.
That's a piece.
Yeah, right? Look at that.
It took my...
Nice.
I see boobies.
Sorry, Chris.
That's all right. Look. Right there. Yeah, all right.
You can see it better. Yeah, you can't
Up
really
away.
see.
They're in there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So yeah, it's either a delicious looking feast or it's kind of nauseating to look at, depending on what you prefer. But yeah, so that's my number 2 and 3, 3 and 2, Montrose and ZZ Top, Tres Hombres. Back to Steve for number 1.
So my number 1 album should probably be no surprise to most. Black Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Yeah, of course, the title track. You know, when I listen to that album, though, even late, Killing Yourself to Live, of course, but I like the more deep tracks like Sabracadabra and Who Are You? Looking for Today is another, you know, I keep very uplifting, and Spiral Architect, just a masterpiece album, and it made it to number 1 on 73 for me, and it's an album that I always go back to and could be my favorite Sabbath album. You know, Sabotage pretty much is, but this is right in the running with Sabotage. I think it's a, you know, I love all the Sabbath stuff, but this is one of the best. And the album cover, I can remember when I first got that album and touched that album and looked at the front of that, and that was pretty damn evil in 73 for, you know, or when I got it was probably 74, 75 when I first touched it and looked at this, and I'm like, wow, this guy is like went to hell on the cover, and on the back he's sick in bed, and you know, it's just it was a great album cover. And I disagree with people not liking artwork for Sabbath, because maybe it's not the best artwork, but I find it all classic. So, and my buddy just made a set of pins for the Sabotage album cover. I know Chris hates that album cover, but I don't know, to me it's just classic stuff. And he made the individual pins of each of the guys with the Black Sabbath logo. I want to try to get those into the store soon. So kind of cool. Bill Ward and
Sabotage cover.
Right?
I wish they were dressed differently. I think it's cool that they're on there with the mirror and all that shit. I just wish they were wearing something somewhat interesting.
How is it Bill Ward had to put on his wife's tights? Like, what?
It was the 70s, man.
Cocaine.
Yeah, it had to be.
They were they probably wasted when they did it too. But
Cocaine.
it's a classic album cover, whatever you think about them.
It is iconic. You remember it, that's for sure.
Yes.
And are we doing mentions now or looping around for that?
We'll loop back around. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Ryan, what do you got? Number 1.
Well, this is going to be no surprise. It's already been mentioned a couple times. One of my favorite bands of all time. Yeah, it's going to be Tyranny Mutation. What's cool about it is the first two albums. I'll talk about the artwork because that hasn't really been addressed more than in detail. It was a guy named Bill Golick. He designed the iconic BOC question, logo, the question upside down question mark, and he did the first album with all the doors in space, which is a very, very cool, one of my favorite covers ever. And he designed this, and that's just a really iconic, really, really cool cover. Even the back with like these monoliths is really cool. And yeah, like you guys have said, the first album definitely was good, a little bluesier, a little more subdued. This one kicks it way into high gear. Obviously, the Red and the Black's a re-recording of a song from the first album, but a lot faster, a lot heavier. Every song on this is great. I listen to this all the time. I love this album. It's hard to pick a favorite album from these guys because they had so many good albums in a row, and all of them are so good. But on some days, this is my favorite BOC album. Seven Screaming Disbusters. And deciphering BOC lyrics is, it's like deciphering Dio lyrics. You think you got to figure it out, and then you think about it for 5 more minutes. You're like, nah, that's not right at all. Way off. And these guys go even further into the fucking weeds than Dio did, because Dio, had a lot of cool visual imagery. They're like, well, nobody really knows what the fuck a holy diver is, but it sounds cool. But these guys throw all kinds of phrases out there and weird imagery and metaphors and allegories. And you read their lyrics long enough and your brain starts to like rotate in your skull. So, yeah, obviously Buck Dharma on this is a fucking beast. Eric Bloom's great. Bouchard, both the Bouchard brothers, Alan Lanier. Awesome album. One of my favorite albums of all time. I fucking love it. Can't say enough about it. I'll probably listen to it after the show because I like it that much. So my number one is going to be Blue Oyster Cult, or actually on this album, it was the Blue Oyster Cult. The only time they threw the word "the" in their name. So the Blue Oyster Cult, Tyranny and Mutation.
Nice. All right, Chris.
Okay, I kind of shot my cookies early on this one, but yeah, Tres Hombres, killer album. I think my favorite moment is the guitar solo on Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers. It's like the best one-note guitar solo that's ever been played. And people like to mention like Cinnamon Girl or something like this, but he's just working at one note like you wouldn't believe, just killer album. The big greasy pile of Tex-Mex is just, as a kid, and when you're hungry because you've inhaled some sort of forest fire that you lit in your room, it was kind of cool to look at it and listen to the music. But yeah, Tres Hombres, ZZ Top, classic, killer album. Number one.
Awesome stuff. All right, Chris, Allo.
Okay, yeah. No surprise for me. My favorite band is Black Sabbath. And so, yeah, my pick is Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Came out December 73. It's a great record. I think it's... from my opinion, it's the best, the best record that they did towards the end. I think it's a much better record than Sabotage. I know a lot of people like Sabotage. I like it too, but I think this record is much better. I know Ozzy wrote that he thought Sabbath Bloody Sabbath was the beginning of the end for the original lineup, and he's like, yeah, I should have left after that record. I think it's a great record. I know you guys mentioned all the tracks already, but my two particular favorites, Killing Yourself to Live and Spiral Architect, which I wish I would have seen them do live, but yeah, they never did it on the 20-something times I saw that version of Sabbath. But yeah, I think it's a great record. And somebody asked me the other day, like, hey, when are they putting out the big 4-disc box set of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath? And I'm like, who knows? They're jumping all around. But I was like, don't expect to have any good rarities because they'll probably just find some shitty bootleg off YouTube and just put that on there. But that's a whole nother story. But yeah, they put out a great record in 73. And yeah, that's my number one.
One of Ozzy's greatest vocal performances, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I mean, the original Sabbath never played Sabbath Bloody Sabbath live in the 70s.
Crazy.
I was just assumed he could never, pull that off live.
Yeah, that's the issue. Yeah.
Sure didn't do it in the 90s or the thousands.
It is, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it on Reunion from the 99?
Yeah, that's a studio thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who knows what they did in the studio, but
I think it's the first song on that album too, but it's it sounds good on the album, whether it's studio trickery or not. Yeah.
But
On
they didn't
Reunion?
play that
Yeah,
when we
I'm
saw
not-
the reunion
I thought
tour.
War Pigs was the first track, but I could be wrong. But yeah, Sabbath, Bloody
You're
Sabbath.
probably right.
I'm
but,
pretty sure is on there.
It's
But
on
yeah,
there.
they probably doctored it.
Eh,
But hey, whatever. It's out there. It's cool. It's cool to have. But
Sounds
yeah,
cool.
the 70s, I'm fairly confident they never played that one live. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Tony Martin was the first singer to do Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath live.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a shame. You would think on the tour for the album that they would have busted that out in
Right.
at least 3 or 4 of these. But
Yeah, you would have thought.
yeah. All right, Nick. Number
Drew
one.
Struzan was the one that painted the cover, who famously did lots of movie posters for Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark. And
Yes, that's true. Yep. That's true.
Awesome. So if people know me, they probably won't be surprised. For the moment, I walked in I always talk about him, but he's who got me on the path. Walked into my brother's room as a little boy, and I saw that Prism poster on the wall. I was like, oh, what is that? And he introduced me to the world of Pink Floyd. I got to go with Dark Side of the Moon because I have the longest standing relationship with it, going back many, 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 many years. And yeah, I mean, it's, what can you say about it? Pink Floyd's simple but direct lyrics, like on Us and Them. It's just like you break that song down. It just, they just, nobody did it as elegantly as them. But it's funny, the song that's changed over time, the meaning of the song has changed over time, is Time. And I remember being, a teenager and listening to the lyrics in that, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty profound. I think one day that might apply to me. And then 10 years got behind me, and wow. And you're like, oh yeah, wow. Yeah. And then another 10 years get behind you, you listen to it again. Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
Thanks a lot, Pink Floyd.
It's very depressing. The older you get, that
Oh
song.
my God. Yeah. So, but yeah, just an
Hello.
album that, yeah, just an album that has maintained its magic for me over the years, even though I probably love the other classic Pink Floyd albums better. I still have to say for this year, it's the closest album to me personally is good old Dark Side. So that's my number one.
Cool. All right, my number one kind of shows you the strength of the early part of the catalog for this band, in that it's going to be number one for me for 1973 against some heavy hitters, but it might not even be my top three favorite albums from this band, and it's Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. I love this album. I think it's great. I probably like a few other Sabbath albums just a little bit better than this, but yeah, just I think one of their most underrated albums. It's got such great deep tracks on it. Killing Yourself to Live, Sabracadabra, National Acrobat is so good. Spiral Architect, so good. And of course, the title track is just absolutely legendary. So, and yeah, I agree with everybody else. Artwork is just amazing. I like the way the album sounds. And I think this album is just kind of experimental enough. I like the volume 4 Sabbath Bloody Sabbath Sabotage period because I like kind of the band doing some little different things. I think once they started getting into Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die, they were kind of going a little bit too far off the reservation for me, but great album. My number one.
Cool.
Back to Steve for some honorable mention recaps.
There we go.
One that I was a little surprised that Pete did not pick is Allman Brothers, Brothers and Sisters.
It's in my honorables.
Yeah, and the Who Quadrophenia was very close to making my list too, which is another just epic, great album. And I guess the other one I would mention is probably no one else listens to on this channel with me is Bob Marley, Catch a Fire, and Bowie, Aladdin Sane. And on live albums from '73, Yes Songs,
Yep.
and Made in Japan by Deep Purple.
Yep.
And I'm done. See, is that okay, Brian? Ryan, I didn't do many.
Name as many as you want.
Stevie Wonder, Intervisions, great pick.
That's a great album. That was a great album.
Living in the city, man.
That's right.
New York, just like I pictured it.
All right, Ryan, you got any?
I got three. There's one that I thought you would mention until you said you're saving your Prague stuff, which is Selling England by the Pound by Genesis. Tied with Foxtrot as my favorite of the Peter Gabriel era. Fucking great album. Not one of their most liked albums, but one I like a lot, which is Tales from Topographic Oceans by Yes. 4 songs. Each song's about a month and a half long, but It's never gotten boring to me. It's like the epitome of like 70s prog excess. But, people used to say that as like, put down. I think the album's fucking great. And it's not my favorite Yes album. I think Relayer and Close to the Edge are better, even the Yes album. But it's great. And my one I did grab off the shelf, which was their 6th album. So this one doesn't get mentioned a lot because I think the first 5 tend to get a little more traction, when conversations come up. But I think it's a great album. Is Sweet Freedom by Uriah Heep. Yes. Really kind of cool cover. It's got some awesome songs on it. Circus, Pilgrim, Stealin'. I'd put it right up there with Demons and Wizards and Magician's Birthday and Salisbury. I think it's a great album. They never really dropped off for me, but the quality would kind of ebb and flow as they went through the 70s and 80s. But back in 73, I think they were still on top of their game, kicking ass. So Sweet Freedom by Uriah Heep. Awesome album. That's all I got.
Ryan, I am in complete shock that you did not mention Budgie, Never Turn Your Back on a Friend.
Fuck. I didn't think of it until this very second, and that's an awesome album. So you know what?
I kept waiting this whole time for you to.
You know what? You're absolutely right. A classic Budgie. That's up there with Bandolier and In for the Kill. Yeah, that's a classic. So yeah, I'll throw Budgie in there. I didn't even, totally slipped my mind.
Yeah, it just missed my top 5. It's a good one.
It's a great album, and yeah, definitely needs to be mentioned. So that's my 4.
I once had a pet parakeet named Budgie.
There you go. Well,
he lived in my house in the 60s.
Nice. I bet you they named the band after your parakeet.
I bet they did.
They might have.
I guarantee they did.
Chris is shaking his head in disgust.
Let's wrap this up before 9 o'clock, folks.
What are you gonna watch?
I got shit to do.
You got
to watch a Godzilla movie.
Sitcom comes on at 9.
I want to make a grilled cheese. I don't fucking know. Let's go.
Shirley, cut him some slack here.
Chris Canzoneri, what do you got in honorables?
Everybody pretty much mentioned all of mine except for this one. Mott. I think they really started to sound like they were supposed to sound, or like everybody thinks they're supposed to sound on this album. So
yeah, I would agree. Good one. Cool. Chris Allo.
Just the one Steve mentioned, $1 Billion Babies. I couldn't find my copy, so $1 Billion Babies.
Cool. Nick Franco.
I got the vinyl with a little fake money in it, but
yeah,
I wasn't looking for that.
Say Aerosmith and Leonard Skinner be mine.
Super 7 just came out with $1 Billion Babies figure, Alice Cooper.
Available at Rock Fantasy.
It is available at Rock Fantasy. Drop in, man. I need some business. Slow.
There you go.
Sydney, you're watching. Got to go buy 3 or 4 of them.
No, yeah. Sydney needs one of those. Probably some fan already sent you one by now.
All right.
Come buy one and send it to Sydney.
Let's see. For me, there are a lot of these have been mentioned already. Alice Cooper, $1 Billion Babies. Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy. Doobie Brothers, The Captain and Me. Nazareth released 2 killer albums that year, Razzmanazz and Loud and Proud. The Budgie, Grand Funk Railroad were an American band. Steely Dan, Countdown to Ecstasy. I'm surprised Steve didn't mention that. Leonard Skinner, pronounced Leonard Skinner, Allman Brothers Band, Brothers and Sisters, Uriah Heep, Sweet Freedom, Quadrophenia by The Who, The Wings Band on the Run, REO Speedwagon Riding the Storm Out, Wishbone Ash, Live Dates, and 4, and the Elton John album, as well as my last pick and all the prog stuff you'll get next week. But Robin Trower, Twice Removed from Yesterday, and Deep Purple, Who Do We Think We Are?
I got one more. One more that my friend Craig mentioned it, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. And that's High on the Hog by Black Oak, Arkansas. Especially
that's a good one.
It's a great album.
I got one more. We have to list, and it was something I listened to tons in the 70s. Bachman Turner Overdrive 2.
Yes, the second album. Very good. Yeah, that's a good one. A lot of those BTO albums are great. So cool. Well, there you have it, everybody. In an hour. Chris Allo, are you happy?
I'm always happy.
8:59, 1 minute short.
Chris, you can watch Sanford and Son. It's on at 9 o'clock.
Just enough time to scoot over to the TV. So thanks for watching, everybody. In the comments below, list your 5 or 10 favorite albums released in 1973. And don't forget, we'll be doing this exact same thing on In the Prog Seat a week from tomorrow. So that's why I've saved all my prog and fusion stuff till next week. So tune in then. And meanwhile, this is on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube, all together.
All the
damn time. For Ryan Scow, Steve Keeler, Chris Allo, Chris Canzoneri, and Nick Franco, I am Pete Pardo. For those of you in the Hudson Valley, hopefully see you at Leonard Skinner Friday night at the Orange County Speedway.
I'll be there.
As will I. So thanks for watching, everybody. See you real soon. Good night.
I got one that no one mentioned. Bowie, Aladdin Sane.
Show's over, Steve. That's it.
That
We're
was
done.
like,
No, I know
Like-
it's over,
We're
but I
done.
said that's one that didn't.
Show's
mention.
over.
it's
Cut it
too
off.
like.